Okay, so many of you know since the big interface showdown, I've been using the Audient iD4 as my daily driver, and I've absolutely loved it. From build quality to sound quality, this thing has it all. But today, my friends, is a dangerous day as there is a new challenger that I'm going to be putting head-to-head with the Audient iD4. Both costing $200. This is the Sterling Harmony H224 audio interface. So we're going to put them head to head. You know we're going to talk build quality. You know we're going to talk features, specs, and of course we got to do a sound test. So before we get started, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the bell so you don't miss as we cover your favorite tech and video games. I'm Chris Grant Jr. It's the Granite Geek Show. Before we get started, both of these interfaces, though not clearly stated, are compatible with iOS. So everything that I say here is going to be applicable to both macOS and iOS. Although certain features like scroll control on the iD4 are not actually compatible with iOS. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's start by comparing these interfaces physically. And the first thing you can tell is the Sterling Harmony is much bigger than the Audient iD4. And this is because of the features, the many features that the Sterling Harmony packs that the Audient iD4 is lacking. So let's start with the top. We have our volume knobs here. They're both clickable. This one dampens on the Audient iD4. This is a complete mute on the Sterling. This is a stepwise rotation volume knob, as where this is continuous, so you don't get the click click. I'm not sure which one I prefer yet. This one obviously feels I have more of a granular control, but this one I can know exactly where I'm setting the audio. Next up, we have our metering, and there's a lot more to see here on the Sterling than we do on the Audient. So starting with the Audient, we have our left and right channels indicated by these LEDs, and it goes from -36 to 0 dB. Here on the Sterling, we have from -44 to 0 dB, so you're getting a little bit more information here. I will say that I like having -3 dB there just to give me a little bit more information before the clip, as where this goes from -6 to 0, but I would say these are both pretty accurate in terms of metering. Here on the right, you can see a dedicated left and right volume metering system here, going again from -44 dB to 0 dB, and you can not only monitor incoming audio through here overall as opposed to these two channel strips, so you can see how much you're turning up the volume, but you can also see the overall volume levels coming into the interface. As far as indicators here, we have a 48 phantom power indicator with a red LED and then a USB connection LED as well. Here on the Sterling, we have our 1 and 2 outputs as well as our 3 and 4 outputs, as well as the headphones. They turn red when they're muted and white when they are in function. You have your mute indicator, your MIDI indicator, as this does use old school MIDI, not USB. And then you have your phantom power indicator here, as well as your just overall power indicator. So getting into the channel strips themselves, we have a 4-in, 4-out interface here and a 2-out, 2-in interface here. But quantity isn't everything, so we'll definitely be looking to see what these sound like in terms of quality. So here you have the gain knob for the direct in. This is where you would plug in your instrument like a guitar. And then here, of course, you have your gain knob for the microphone. And these are not stepwise rotating knobs like the main volume. They're just continuous. And of course, right here, you have your monitor mix button, which is dedicated, which is lacking here on the Sterling Harmony. This allows you to control how much of your audio you're hearing directly from the computer or DAW versus what you're hearing direct from the interface. So obviously you can turn it all the way to the extreme of one or the other. On the back, you can see this is an XLR TRS combo input jack for your microphone. And then on the front, this is what the instrument in looks like. This also has dual headphone jacks, which is really cool. So you can plug in either a 3.5 millimeter or your 1/4 inch. So you don't have to worry about having adapters at the right time. Now on the Sterling side, we have 2 channel strip controls. And you might be wondering, I thought this was a 4-in. Well, it is. You can actually use these buttons to control whether you have your mic in or your line in, as the microphone ends on the back are XLR and TRS combo jack. So you depress these in order to use XLR, and you click them again in order to use the line in here, or the line ins on the front. Now these are pretty self-explanatory. This is your gain range knob for channels 1 and 2 right here. And you also have pad buttons, which are, it's a feature that's way over its price range, but you have those soft touch plastic here. And once again, they're just doubling down on these features. You also have a low cut switch on both of these channels, so you can cut out the low end prior to it getting into the mix. So I'm personally a little bit more impressed with the I/O here for $200. Again, you could get 4 line ins or 2 microphones, and obviously here is your phantom power button. While we're back here, these are the outputs 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. These are for your stereo speakers out. They're all balanced as well, so you're not dealing with RCA or anything like that. You've got your old school MIDI controls, a Kensington lock, and your USB-C input. Now on the back of the Audient iD4, you can see we have the USB-C for connecting to your computer, your right and left 1/4 inch speaker inputs, as well as your phantom power, and of course your mic in. Now going to the front of the interface, very clean, very simple. You've got your 2 line ins and your headphone jack. No dual headphone jack option here, so you will have to have your adapter if you're using a 3.5mm headphone input. But I would say both look very clean. Again, you gotta love the metal. And this is thick metal here. Goodness gracious. Like, no expenses spared on the build quality of this. This looks metal, but it's actually not. It's actually plastic. Now, comparing the two of these on the side, you can see this is console designed on the Sterling, kind of sloping up. This does make it a little bit easier, kind of like a mouse or a trackpad where it's sloped up for your hands. And here, this has a kind of low sitting. It's definitely thinner than this is at its thickest point, but overall, it doesn't slope. And that's good for desktop applications as well. Also, here you have your Kensington lock for the Audient iD4. Now on the back here for the Audient iD4, you have your 4-point rubber feet, and this is perfect for the size of this interface. Never had an issue with this sliding, and it was fine for any knocks or hits. Now for the Sterling, you've got your strip rubber feet here, and these do perfectly as well. Obviously, you're going to need a little bit more grip because of the weight of this thing being much bigger, although I will say, this one is not too much heavier when you pick them up, but obviously both of these interfaces are meant for desktop use, so you're not going to be picking them up too often. Now moving on to special buttons, here we have our speaker button, which allows us to turn on and off our speakers with a dedicated button, which is really nice. And this does serve as a mute button, as where just clicking the knob here would mute one of them. And then here we have our iD4 button, which controls a feature called scroll control on the Audient iD4, which allows you to use the physical knob here to control virtual parameters in software. So it could be scrubbing through a video, or turning up the volume, or adjusting a plugin and a DAW. So I've loved this feature, and I really wish that every interface had it. Physical inputs are a great thing to have, and for the computer to be able to recognize it and apply it in different applications is a really, really sweet trick. Now, as far as special buttons on the Sterling, we have our switch between mono and stereo, which is fantastic. In your 1 and 2 or 3 and 4 speaker outputs, you can monitor in mono or stereo, and if you hold it, you can get your direct monitor, which serves the same function as the Audient iD4's granular control over your DAW versus your input knob. And then again on the Sterling, we have our mode control between your headphones, your 3 and 4 monitor output, and your 1 and 2 monitor output. So this is how you select the output, and again, you control the levels via this volume knob. So guys, that's all you need to know physically about these interfaces. I gotta say, personally, I am liking the sloped design here. It does really feel console-like, soft touch pads and silver buttons. But as far as the build quality, the metal here is just, it's phenomenal. You kind of just love to touch this thing, as where there is some plastic here on this device. So there are definitely some things to love on both of these interfaces as far as physically. And then, of course, aesthetically, I kind of prefer the gunmetal and black look over just the kind of black and greenish gray look here. I never was really feeling this. This color just feels a little cheap to me. And now, of course, I'm going to show you some sweet B-roll while we talk some tech specs. The most important thing when considering a new audio interface is, of course, how is it going to sound? And that's where we're going to get into tech specs. We're going to talk the ins and outs. Literally, we're going to talk the line ins and microphone inputs, as well as the main speaker outputs and headphone outputs. Starting with the line inputs, the Audient iD4 boasts a bigger range at 40 decibels versus the gain range of the Sterling Harmony coming in at 35 decibels in its operational range. Now, when it comes to frequency response, the Sterling is no slouch, boasting the average human range of hearing from 20 Hz to 20 kHz, but Audient just goes above and beyond, boasting between 10 Hz to 20 kHz, ensuring that even the most sensitive of ears will still be able to hear a difference in the Audient iD4. In terms of dynamic range, we've got 106 dB A-weighted from the Sterling and only 100 from the Audient iD4. So you see a win in the column of the Sterling there, and the Sterling has a noise floor of 0.0044% versus the Audient iD4, which is just 0.1. Both incredibly low, but here we do see the Sterling Harmony pulling ahead. Continuing a bit of a winning streak for Sterling, getting to the microphone inputs, when it comes to the gain range, it boasts 2 decibels, count them, 2 decibels higher than the Audient iD4 Mark II, coming in at 60 decibels operational range versus the Audient's 58. But the streak ends there as the Audient fires back with that increased frequency response from 10 Hz to 40 kHz, whereas again, the Sterling just limits itself to the human range of hearing on average. Now with the microphone inputs, they both tie in terms of noise floor as well as EIN, both having 129 dBUs A-weighted, and when it comes to the noise floor, 0.04%. So when it comes to the microphone preamps, they both seem pretty dead even, but on paper I would have to give the edge to the Audient iD4 as its frequency response range is just bigger than the Sterling Harmonies. But you know, what's on paper doesn't always translate well, so we'll have to listen to the ear test for that one. So moving on and moving out, we find ourselves comparing the outputs of these two devices. And remember, the Sterling Harmony has 4 quarter-inch balanced outputs for stereo speakers, whereas the Audient iD4 Mark II simply has 2. So the outputs 1, 2, and 3, 4 for the Sterling are a tiny bit different. So for maximum output level, we have 18 dBU. This is balanced without direct monitor engaged, and Audient is a little kind of blurry with their ultimate output there, but we do have a lineup stat that shows 12 dBU, so we should be getting a louder experience on the Sterling Harmony. Once again, that frequency response though coming back to bite the Sterling as Audient goes above and beyond again, including the 10 Hz to 40 kHz range. Now pulling ahead when it comes to dynamic range is the Audient iD4 Mark II, which does boast 10.5 more decibels A-weighted in dynamic range than the Sterling Harmony, which comes in at 115 decibels A-weighted. But the Sterling fires right back with a lower noise floor coming at 0.0047% versus 0.0006%. So, and this makes sense considering that the Sterling Harmony will have a greater output. The noise would be more noticeable at those louder volume levels. Now, when it comes to outputs 3 and 4 for the Sterling Harmony, the specs are exactly the same besides the noise floor, which is at 0.000602, which is much closer to what we get on the Audient iD4. And finally, when it comes to the headphone outputs, the Audient iD4 seems to be winning here, having a greater dynamic range at 125.5 decibels A-weighted versus 113 decibels, but the Sterling Harmony does have, again, a lower noise floor at 0.0077% versus 0.0009%. So it's got lower noise, but not as much frequency response, again, with Audient being consistent in that 10 Hz to 40 kHz audio frequency response range, which I think is just something that's going to give you a little bit more peace of mind when it comes to knowing that you're hearing everything that your ears will allow you to. So these two interfaces actually match up remarkably well, going tit for tat in a lot of specs. What I do think is that the Audient iD4 will come through with a little bit better sound quality, but we'll have to wait until we have the listening tests in order to determine that for ourselves. So let's get into that right now. Okay, so what you're listening to now is a voiceover performance coming in directly through the Stellar X2 microphone and going into the preamps on the Audient iD4 Mark II. Now, I've been impressed with the audio quality on this device for a long time, and I expect it to be no different here. This device, once again, comes in at $199.99, and affiliate links will be down in the description below. So what you're listening to now is a voiceover performance coming in through the Stellar X2 microphone directly into the preamps on the Sterling Harmony H224. This audio interface is actually made by GarageBand, and I'm impressed with the amount of features, but this will be the first time I'm actually testing out the audio quality when it comes to vocals. So again, this interface comes in at $199.99, but you can actually find deals on it for even cheaper. Affiliate links, of course, will be down in the description below. It's a great way to help out the channel. Okay, so time for some conclusions. The Audient iD4 is an amazing interface with incredible build quality and sound quality that I would say is just a little bit better than what you get with the Sterling Harmony H224. So if you're talking the most important thing, I still think the Audient iD4 has it in spades. The sound quality that comes out of this really doesn't make sense for its price point. But when it comes to features, the Sterling Harmony H224 is doing something incredible that I've never seen with an interface at this price range. From your low cut to your pad to it being 4 in and 4 out at under $200, just about $200. Your LED metering strips, your ability to have the old school MIDI, like this thing really just can do it all. The problem with the Sterling, though, for me, is size. So this is something that has a lot of great build quality, and it's big. It's meant for desktop, but it's really meant for desktop only. I've said in the past that I wouldn't prefer to take this thing on the go, but I know that if I needed to, it can fit in a bag. It's not super heavy when compared to something like this. The sound quality is excellent, and it's just ready to go. Whereas there is no way, not a way that I would ever take this on the go with me. This thing sits on a desk, and that's really where it stays. You know, if I'm just backpacking it with some mics, some headphones, a laptop maybe, and an iPad, this thing is way too big to go in a backpack. But if I were taking like a whole bunch of gear in several cases, yeah, I think I could do something like this, but I wouldn't want to use this thing like out and about. I would really want to use this indoors and on a desk. That's where I feel like this shines the most. So guys, with all things considered, I actually think we have our first draw on our hands. The slight edge going to the Audient in terms of build quality, but in terms of I/O, the slight edge going to the Sterling Harmony H224. There are pros and cons to having both of these, but I really don't think you can go wrong with either one of these. If you really care about I/O, then your choice is really clear. But with all that I/O, you are going to be sacrificing some portability, as even just filming this, your arm starts to get tired. As where with this, don't get me wrong, all this gunmetal type construction, it is heavy, but it's nowhere near as heavy as the Sterling. So let me know what you think, obviously, down in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of the sound test. Also, quick announcement, I am starting a Mercari page, the official page of the Granny Geek Show, where, you know, I'll be letting go and selling off some of the gear that I've just acquired. This room is not big enough for all of this gear, so I figured that's a cool way to give back to the fans. So links to that will be down in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, guys. You're going to want to subscribe, otherwise you're just going to miss all this content. Got a ton of iPad, Mac OS content, tech, gear, you name it, coming your way. And be sure to click the bell so you get a notification on your phone when I drop new videos. Of course, like the video if you like the video, as we cover your favorite tech and video games. I'm Chris Grant Jr. It's the Granny Geek Show.